Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here, and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm looking at this, the Mustang P-51B with pilots and ground personnel from ICM. So join me as I take a look inside the box and see what we've got. So without any further ado, let's get stuck straight into it. We have on the front some very nice artwork depicting the Mustang and the ground crew around the aircraft. You can see here that it's, I'm not sure where in particular, but it's positioned on some Marston matting. Down here bottom right tells us that it's 1/48 scale. We have an item code of 48125. The back of the box doesn't feature anything, so we'll move on to the long thin edge, and it tells us that the length of this aircraft is 205 millimeters, wingspan is 235, and has 94 parts and 20 parts for the 5 figures. However, cement and paint are not included. It does say the Ukraine address for ICM, and we also have a shipping or import address for the UK. On the thin edge we have the same information as on the front of the box, and then on the other edge we have two images of the included paint scheme, one from the left and one from the right. And that is pretty much all the information we've got on the box. And if you know anything about my unboxings by now, you'll know that I like to see a tooling date and a release date from the company. So there's none of that information on there, so it would be very difficult without doing research to know what kind of kit you're going to get when you take this home. So if you bought this purely based off of the very nice artwork and you take it home and you open it up and you could be disappointed because it could be an older kit compared to another kit you've had from the same range which was more recent. So one criticism or plea would be make sure that companies get these things on there. But we are going to just open this box up and carry on. He says, if you know ICM kits, they do tend to use standard box sizes. So this is a 1/48 scale kit. I recently did the 1/72 109E, and they are the same size, exactly the same size boxes, because they use standard box sizes. Well, that's okay, because you can reuse these boxes however you like, because they're quite nice. So opening the box up, what have we got? And we've got a little picture of a dog. Do not scold him, we will replace everything. So if your dog gets hold of your kit and eats it, then contact the after sales company team and they will sort it out for you. He looks quite happy with himself. He just wants to have a go at building himself. So let's put that to the side. As usual, I'm going to look at the instructions first. And as mentioned, this comes with ground crew. So the first one here, this is a slightly glossy A5 sheet. It has one little sprue here. It has a different item number, so you can get these figures separately. And then we have paint colour callouts here from the Model Master range, but you could use your own ones if you wanted to. And then flip over, it's all in black and white, but all of the colours are labelled with letters, but that would mean flipping backwards and forwards. Personally, I'd probably go through and write in what they are myself. But you can see we've got all 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our figures with colour callouts annotated, which is pretty good. So we will now have a look at the other instructions. And this is another little A5 sheet. This is telling us that it's flown by J. Herbst, who had 18 victories. A little bit of information about applying decals and a caution there. We have 4 different colours. Make sure you pay attention to your colour callouts because they don't carry through. So whatever was letter A on this one is not going to be letter A on this one, and it's probably not going to be letter A on that one. So make sure you don't mix them up and paint them the wrong colours. So on this one, for example, letter A is olive drab, whereas on there it's white, and on that one it's black. So just make sure you pay attention because they don't carry the same consistency throughout the instructions. On the back then is our painting instructions, and sadly they are not in colour. They have picked out the letters in colour, red, to highlight them to you. However, it is not printed in colour, which is a bit of a shame. It's something that I would like to see because it just makes it so much clearer. However, this aircraft is painted in 2 colours, and that is a lighter grey underneath and a camo olive green on the top. Or as they call it, olive drab. So it's fairly simple to do this one because it's two main colours. Prop, etc. will be slightly different. And don't forget, of course, that you can use the box artwork as a guide if you need to. On to the main assembly instructions for our aircraft then. And I will just dig out the decals and put them to one side. This is an A4 piece of paper, which is effectively split into an A5 booklet. Up the top, we've got a sprue map, and it does indicate to us that some elements are not needed. It looks as though it comes with different prop blades, potentially for a different variant, different control panel, and a few smaller details which we don't need. But coming on down, we have our cockpit assembly, and you can see there are quite a number of parts. There is an optional choice here between the two chairs, and there is a pilot included in the aircraft as well. Assemble up your cockpit and then move on to installing your cockpit inside of the fuselage with a few extra details. And then we have the choice here of different engine exhausts, but it depends on whether you're doing a P-51C or a P-51B. I think these instructions are generic and there are other offerings of this kit. So for this particular version, as it only comes with one paint scheme, I need the P-51B exhaust pipes. Moving on down, we glue our there's an internal landing gear bit, and then our wings go together. There is a note here about drilling out some holes, which I presume that is for like aerial masts, and these are for drop tanks or bombs. And then coming on down, we have our flaps, which may be possible to glue in a drooping or lowered position, seen as they come as separate parts. It doesn't indicate that our landing gear can be raised. However, I imagine it would just be a simple matter of gluing the landing gear doors over the landing gear bays. So hopefully that wouldn't be too difficult to do if you wanted to do that. Landing gear gets assembled, and there are drop tanks or bombs included depending on what you want to use. And then we turn over the page. We have our prop assembly, and it comes as separate blades. I'm not a fan of separate blades, but I understand in the bigger scale sometimes, you know, it's a slightly easier way of doing things. Otherwise you'd have massive propellers. But in 148, I think you can still get away with single propeller blade assemblies. But we also have our, so we had aerial masts that go in there, which I had to drill out the holes for. And then our canopy. So the canopy does not appear to be openable. It comes as one piece, which means that your pilot is going to be stuck in there, which is a shame, because on the artwork, if we have a look at the artwork quickly, it does have the canopy open, which is a little bit of a shame, but it is what it is. You'll just have to either make alterations or live with it, or maybe find an aftermarket. We do have a choice of canopy, but as mentioned, we haven't got decals for a P-51C or a Mark III Mustang in RAF use, so we're going to end up using the P-51B canopy. And again, we've got all our colour callouts here. So generally, the instructions are a little bit small. They could have printed it on an A4 piece, like per page, to make it a bit clearer, but I don't think I'll have any issues with reading them. So that's a very minor point. And then we can look at the decals, and we have a moderately sized decal sheet. I have not yet used ICM decals. They look to be printed to quite a nice quality. The roundels here, there's a strange sort of overlap. It's not as noticeable in like that angle, but if you go to there, you can see there's like another lip, but I think that's where they've done the white underneath, then the blue on the top. Hopefully that won't be too noticeable. Text though is fairly nice and legible, and there are quite a few stencils, but it's not overbearing like it is in some kits, so I think there's a good balance there. Generally they look quite nice to my eye, and I think that they should apply without any real issues, so yeah, it should be okay. Bit of a shame that you only get one decal scheme, but it is what it is, I suppose. Right, so with those things out of the way, let's now look at the plastic parts. And the first bag on the top is the figures. So let's have a look at the figures. There we go, there's our figures. So we have a standing pilot, a sort of standing, perhaps an officer, and we also have a seated, I think that's a seated pilot there, and crewman or ground crew working on something. You've got separate hats. Details on these are quite nice. There's not much in the way of flash. There is some, and there are some mould seams which will need cleaning up, but these figures are very nice. And that's part of the reason why I bought this set, is because it comes with the figures and it lends itself to being a little diorama. Probably might not use the pilot again, because I think you get a pilot in the actual aircraft kit, but you know, you could always get a couple of chairs out and they could be sitting next to the aircraft having a cup of tea. I mean, well, Americans is coffee, isn't it? A cup of coffee for the Americans. But yeah, so there's an idea. So yeah, these are very nice looking figures. Lots of nice little bits of detail on there. Let's now look at the aircraft parts. All of these come contained within their own little bag, so let's get them out. And as usual, I'm going to take a look at the clear parts first. So here they are. And we have a control panel, another control panel. That one's got like rudder pedals on it. That one doesn't. One of them I know we don't use. We've got the rear windows. We've got some smaller parts. There is some flash on these, which will need cleaning up. This is the one that I'm going to use, which is the P-51B variant. And then you have the other variant here. There is some flash. Panel lines are raised, moulded quite well. They're very shallow though. I wish we had some canopy masks, but that's something I can probably find separately. It is worth noting that the P-51B bubble has this weird, it's almost like a stain on it. I don't know if that'll show up. It's like a stain on the inside. I don't know if that's from the moulding or the mould release or what, but I don't like it. Fortunately, it's not on this part, but it is a shame because it's not like made the plastic clear and it doesn't seem to be rubbing off. It's almost like the plastic, it's like a big seam or crack down the middle, which is a shame because if I did want to build a P-51B variant with different transfers, this weird canopy could cause issues. There's a big seam around the outside. So I don't really know what's going on there, but that's a shame if I was going to use it. But the one that I am going to use looked perfectly fine. So we won't worry too much about that. The other main parts then, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 medium grey plastic sprues, which are the same colour as the figures, so they must use the same consistent plastic. The plastic doesn't feel overly greasy. It does feel a little bit flexible. I know when I did my 109, I thought the plastic was quite thin, but this, I mean, because it's a bigger kit, it probably is a little bit thicker, but it is still quite flexible. So we'll have a look at the wings as we've got that one right here in my hand, and the level of detail is generally okay. There is some sort of surface scuffs on the top of the edge of the plastic there. I don't know if that'll show up in the video, but it's almost as if the moulding hasn't been looked after quite as well as it could have been, and there is a little bit of damage in there, which has resulted in some surface texture. There is some flash, but there is rivet detail in various places on the ailerons, on the flaps, which I'm hoping you can position in the lowered position if you want to. We've got little moulded representation of the machine guns there. Generally not a bad looking kit. A bit of flash there along the edge of the aileron, which will need to be trimmed away. On the inside, we've got some detail for our landing gear bays, and the ejector pin marks are quite cleverly positioned away from the areas where we're going to have visible parts. So yeah, not too bad on that one. This sprue features our separate prop blades. Yep, there is a figure for the pilot, which comes as one piece. The one on the other set came as different parts to be glued together. We have our wheel hubs, air intakes, spinner, drop tanks, bomb components, tyres, a little bit of flash on that. These tyres have got moulded depressions in them for the weight of the aircraft, whereas these ones haven't. We have landing gear parts with some slight sink marks on them. We've got air radiators there, engine exhausts, a little bit of flash that needs cleaning up. Got a tool date on there, copyright date at the top, which we'll discuss shortly. Small sprue then with our landing gear legs, pilot's chair, landing gear wheel for the rear of the aircraft. We've got our pylons for our drop tank or bombs and some internal details, as well as other bits and pieces, generally well reproduced. And then here we've got our tail surfaces, which have recessed and raised details, and we've got like subtle marks there for the ribs. And our internal cockpit components, which has a nice level of detail on the floor there. Internal landing gear bays have some detail as well, which is nice to see. And so do the landing gear doors. Again, though, a little bit of flash that will need cleaning up as we go through the build. Generally, not terrible. I haven't heard anything about fit issues with this kit in particular, but it's something I will keep an eye out for as I go through the build. Finally, the last little sprue that we're going to look at features our main fuselage parts. And the recessed details are quite nice. They're not overly like trenches, they're quite subtle. There is some detail like rivets and stuff in places as may be appropriate. There is flash in various places which will need cleaning up, which is a little bit of a shame. But on the whole, not too bad. There's no detail really on the inside, but then again, we did have cockpit components for that. And yeah, I think it should go together and build up into a nice representation of the Mustang. And it has that extra value in the sense that it also has those figures. So let's recap. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grey plastic sprues molded to a reasonable quality. There is some flash, but the details that are present seem to be pretty acceptable. We also had a clear sprue, which for our purposes, the parts that we need look to be absolutely fine. However, the extra parts, they have issues, which is a shame. We also had a little sprue with 5 figures on, which I may try and squeeze into the build in some way or another. We had a little sheet of decals, which seem to be produced to a good quality, but again, it remains to be seen how well they go onto the model. There was also our instructions, which, although a little bit small and printed in black and white primarily, they seem to be able to do the job, and I shouldn't have any issues. However, I would prefer if they had been printed in colour. Particularly these ones would have been nice to be in colour, because it would help just make it a little bit more obvious what I'm doing. However, I do quite like this little picture. This is quite fun. Not sure if I'll frame that and put it on the wall because that'd be quite funny, but I do like that one. And all of that came contained within this lovely illustrated box. And I do quite like the scene. That's what caught my eye when I was looking online. I thought, oh, I want to do that. I want to replicate that in some way or another. I can't, though, because the canopy doesn't open without modification, so he may need to come out of the aircraft and be doing something else, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, talking a little bit about the kit then, I swinging back to me discussing tooling dates. It would have been great to have seen the tooling date on the box, and I'm sure as we've gone through, some of you may have noticed that we have actually got a tooling date on the aircraft, which is 2001. So I think there may be a tooling date on this one. No, there isn't. So these may be different ages. At the moment, I don't quite know what the age of this tooling is, but I know that the Mustang in particular comes from 2001. The particular version I have here, which came with figures, I think was first released in around 2006, so it's been around for a while, but it is possible that this was not manufactured in 2006. It may be a more recent release, as sometimes these things come in out of ranges without any real pomp and circumstances, and it's not really advertised. So again, having those dates, tooling date and release date on the box would have been really nice to have. But how much did I pay for this kit? Well, I spent £18.89 for this, which is a little bit cheaper than it seems to be going for in most places online, seeing as it seems to be going for around the £20 mark here in the UK. This seems sort of in line with other 1/48 scale kits, and the fact as well that it does come with the extra figures. Disappointingly, it only comes with the one choice of transfers though, and as mentioned, we don't have the option to open the canopy, which will make replicating the scene shown on the box a little bit more difficult. Not necessarily impossible, but it's probably something that I am not going to bother messing around with, as I'm sure that I will absolutely mess up cutting up the canopy to get it to open. Given that this is a 2001 tooling and it does have a little bit of excess flash, I don't think it looks terrible, but perhaps maybe it could retail for a little bit cheaper given some of the issues that we have pointed out. On the whole though, I don't think it's a particularly bad kit by the looks of it, and I'm looking forward to getting it onto the workbench and attempting to do something similar as shown here. But let me know what you thought of my review and if my assessment of this kit was fair down in the comments. Before I sign off, a massive thanks to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. If you'd like to join these guys on screen and find out more about what becoming a Model Club member means, take a look at the links in the description. Alternatively, you can support the channel in other ways, and again, full information is underneath the video. To support this channel for free though, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Last thing to say though is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.